Good morning. This is I mentioned in the note that on Monday mornings that I try and I tend to head over to Pearland and go to the Pearland coffee roasters, get a cup of coffee, and sometimes Rick will buy me a cup of coffee, or vice versa. And from 7:15 to 7:45, Rick leads this team that tries to build the kingdom of heaven here in Pearland. And if it happens in Pearland, maybe it happens next door in Houston. So I've gotten to know Rick through this program over the last couple of years, but every time it is fun to check out our speakers. Because I knew Rick was a pastor for 10 years at the Rivers. But what I see when I look at his resume is he graduated college and then 10 years later went back to school, got a master's of divinity, and then 10 years later got an honorary doctoral of ministry. And this pattern of, and then in 10 years means you haven't given up on yourself. You are still investing you're still investing, you're still searching to see what God has for you, willing to change hats. And that I respect people like that. So with that respect and that introduction, please welcome Pastor Rick Torrenson.
Oh, no.
We already did.
Oh, you already did? Okay, I'm sorry. Camera right in front of me. Man. All right, just keep smiling at me. It'll be okay. Just you and I. Well, good morning. How's everybody doing? Y'all good this morning? Who are all the interns here that are new? One, come on, a couple there. Where are you guys from? This area, or did you come in from out of state? Yes, out of state, this area? Come on, tell me. Speak to me. Austin, that's still in the state. Yeah, who else? Was there someone? I saw a hand over here.
Houston.
You're in Houston? Okay. All right, I was just wondering how many of you have gotten a good welcome to the heat of Houston, Texas. Because it is something. I've been here 30 years. I'm originally from the Midwest. Grew up in Chicago area. Went to school in Iowa. Worked in Indianapolis. Family's all in Wisconsin. Met a girl in Indianapolis. How many of you were here last time I spoke about a year ago? Anybody remember? Okay, so I won't go into a lot of that. But met a girl in Indianapolis who actually was from Pasadena, Texas. She intrigued me in a great way. I was not a man of God. I was not a saved man. I was a lost man, very selfish. Looking out for my own little world, and she kind of captured me, and so I got in my car and drove to Houston. Caught her. We've been married 28 years. She and her family helped lead me to the Lord, and became a pastor in the Methodist Church for a while. Planted a church in Pearland, a house of prayer, coffee shop, several businesses, and started working with Doug Stringer, who most of you may know. I've been a part of Somebody Cares for the last 15 years. With Doug and working in his offices and serving him and volunteering for him for about the last 10 years. But as I share with you this morning, I know we've just got a few minutes, and I want to try to encourage you this morning and speak life over who you are and what you're doing, because you are constantly speaking life over our nations by providing them with a life source, which is water. But it's not just water, you're providing them with Christ. You're providing them with love, with hope. With vision in the future. And I know you're speaking that no matter what your role is, you're living that and speaking that into their lives. And a lot of times when we are giving, there isn't always a lot of the giving back. And I just want to say, from someone who's been a part of what you guys do and seen what you guys do over the years in relationships, thank you for whatever role you play, whatever you do. You know this, but I'm telling you it matters. It doesn't just matter to God. We know it matters to God, but it matters to young men and young women, to little boys and little girls, to moms and dads, to the broken, the least, and the lost. What you do matters. And I'm thankful for that. And you know what? It's not over. I think you guys have just scratched the surface in what you do. I think as a kingdom of God, we've just scratched the surface in what God is calling us to do and the impact He's calling us to. And that brings me to a little bit of what I want to share with you. So I left pastoring because my son went through a real difficult time. And it required my full-time attention. My wife is an executive, and our worlds are a little flip-flopped. I'm more of the wife, she's more of the husband. We've embraced that reality. I cook and I clean, she makes money and allows me to cook and clean. And seriously, we struggled with that for a while. but we realized that was her calling and my calling, and we found a beautiful marriage of how our lives would fit together. But when my son, both my children are adopted from birth, when my son went through some seasons of very difficult times, suicidal, very just his internal, the rage of his identity, who he was, where he's from, why he's here, his challenges that he had, he didn't know how to process those. It got very dire, and it required full-time attention. And as my wife and I prayed, the Lord was very clear that that was where my full-time attention needed to be. And about almost 10 years ago now, I stepped away from everything I was doing and gave my full-time attention to my son. That was about a 5 to 7 year process that we're still in. He's doing great. He's 23 now. He's building his life. He's working through things. We're in a healthy place with him. But that was about a 5 to 7 year window. And as that got healthy, the Lord said, Rick, go back to your dreams. Go back to what I called you to do. And I said, well, I don't know what that looks like anymore. I thought it was a pastor of a church. And he said, no, it was never really a pastor of a church. It was a person who empowers and speaks life over people with my word and with who I am, and calls out people's destinies, calls out their potential. I said, that sounds really cool. I like it. What does that look like? And how do you do that? I knew how to do it from a pulpit, but I wasn't seeing the fruit that I really felt like you should see. And God began to open doors for me through relationships to begin to sow into people's lives. And I began to try to understand what that looked like. We started a platform ministry in Pearland, Texas called One Pearland. One Pearland is an organization that is mobilizing the body of Christ through the marketplace, education, government, families, individuals, churches. And we bring them together and empower them to share and live out their faith within a community to see that community impacted for Christ. I worked with George Otis, and I shared about that last time I was here, for 5 years. He does the transformation videos. If you've ever seen the videos with the carrots as big as your arm kind of thing, does anyone know George Otis and the Sentinel Group and the transformation videos? So I traveled with him for 5 years. He was a researcher and told the stories of God's activity around the world. He would go in and just tell stories and do documentaries and videos of God's pervasive, powerful, transformational work in the land where people of God cried out to God. Amazing influence and amazing impact in my life. I say all that to bring you to where it's kind of manifested today. I have been serving and discipling and coaching and coming alongside and counseling, whatever you want to call it, for many years within a church environment. And as I stepped back into this world, God called me to begin to do the same thing, but come at it a little bit differently. I've always been, and you can see from my shirt, I've always been, how many know of John Maxwell and have heard of John Maxwell or read anything he does? Most people. He's one of the #1 leadership consultants and gurus around the earth today. But he started out as a pastor in a small town in Ohio, grew a huge church in California, and then felt a calling to step outside of the church and begin to speak and teach and write. And he says this, and I believe it because it's been true of me, the impact he's had outside of the church into the kingdom of God, into culture, into relationships, when he stepped outside of the pulpit, has exponentially grown from the impact he had from within the pulpit. I'm not saying there's no impact in the pulpit. I was there for 20 years, but it's an interesting time that we live in. We are all ministers and pastors of the gospel of Jesus Christ in what we do. 100%. That is your calling. Represent Christ, whatever that looks like, wherever you are. And I'm finding out that there is strength in that. So what I wanted to share with you today, so I started working with John Maxwell, got licensed with him, trained with him, certified with him. I added his resources to the things that I do, and I do life development, executive coaching, personal life coaching. I do leadership training for businesses and institutions and churches, and we've been doing that for about a year now, and just watching that explode. Because I'm able to sit with people and speak life over them and share principles from Scripture in a way that becomes transformational in their everyday lives. And I want to do that with you a little bit today if I can, just spend a few minutes. And I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to speak fast. If you need me to slow down, just kind of do the, okay, stop, slow down, and we'll stop, and I'll slow down, and we'll get there. So let me do this. Let me ask you a question. Should have this in front of you. If you're a blank filler outer, great. I might get to all the blanks. If you really need them, I'll stick around as long as I have to fill in every blank that you have on that page, because I know there's people that'll have the rest of their day ruined if they don't have a blank filled out. Those of you who don't care about blanks, don't fill it out. It's okay. It's just there if it's helpful to you. So I wanted to give you that. We're going to go through that. Let me ask you this question. And I want a little bit of feedback just really quickly as we go through. What do you believe is the greatest gap in the world? What's the greatest gap that we have? I know it's a generic, big question, but any idea of these gaps that exist in our lives in the world? what do you think the greatest gap is? Any idea? It's kind of an odd question.
The haves and the have-nots.
The haves and the have-nots, okay?
I think communication.
Communication is a huge gap. Yeah. Do a whole series of training and teaching on communicating within the workplace because it's one of the number one problems with conflict. And if you're married, you know that that's a true statement. Anything else? Let me say this. The greatest gap that I believe is between knowing and doing. We have lots of information. If you have your phone, I needed to take it out of my pocket because it's vibrating, and I mean, this is a living organism. I know it is, even though it's not. It's constantly at work. But the information that we have at our fingertips is greater than any other time in history. There is not a lack of information. Anything you want to do, anything you think you can do, anything you desire to do, anything you dream to do, anything you want to know, that information can be found at your fingertips. Doesn't make it good, doesn't make it bad, just makes it true. It's real. We know a lot of things, yet we don't actually do as much. Our follow-through, the commitment, the gap of what we know and what we do is the largest gap, I believe, that exists. James Allen said this: people are anxious to improve circumstances, but unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. It says people are anxious to improve their circumstances, but unwilling to improve themselves, therefore they remain bound. I think that's true. We want our circumstances to change, but we really don't want us to change. We become comfortable. And so we remain in that place. Now, I want to spend just a few minutes with you today, and I want to narrow that gap for you and talk about how we can do that. There's this understanding, and John Maxwell says this, and it's on your page there: growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are and where you could be. Growth stops when you lose that tension. How many of you enjoy tension, conflict, challenges, change? How many of you relish that and say, I can't wait for the next conflict? Not one of us say that. We don't enjoy it, we don't like it, but I want to flip that script with you a little bit, because how you view that has a direct impact on how you view yourself and how you view your potential and what's released in your potential. How many of you believe that you have reached your potential? Raise your hand if you think you have maxed out your potential. You are there. There is no more growth in you. That doesn't matter how old you are, if you think you've reached it. Nobody? Okay, how about this? How many of you want to continue to grow? You have a desire, a passion to grow from where you are, whatever that looks like, whatever that means, to grow. Okay, everybody. That's all of us. You don't believe you've reached your potential. You desire to grow. But do you know how many people, how many of us don't ever grow? That have that same feeling? We don't ever get to that next thing. We don't ever realize that next dream. We don't ever get to that next place or that next desire. And 10 years later, we're saying the same thing. Yes, I've not reached my potential. And yes, I want to grow. And yes, I'm still in the same place I was 5 years ago. I'm not okay with that in my life. I'm not sure about how you feel about that. So we all say we want to grow, but the truth of the matter is that most of us, we avoid any form of pressure that would cause us to grow because we don't like feeling uncomfortable. We don't like it when people start to step on our toes or encroach into our space very much. So the truth is that most people don't grow because it involves change. It involves change. Change involves stretching. Stretching creates tension. Tension creates discomfort and pain. And like we just said, how many like discomfort and pain? How many like change? None of us. So if you play that out, our desire to grow, our desire to reach our potential, and our dislike of discomfort and change and pressure, these things come at odds. And one of them is going to win. Which is winning in your life? So let me ask you another question. How many of you have just gone through, are in, or know that change is coming? You have just gone through some change. You're in the middle of some change. Or you know what? You're going, I know there's some change coming. So if that's true, if that's where you're at, if you're in that place, right, then what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do about it? How are you going to go through it? And how will that change end up being a benefit that grows you not something that slows you. It's all about how you look at it and how you go through it. So I want you to do me a favor. Y'all, there's rubber bands in front of you. Grab a rubber band. Okay? Grab. Oh, I better not move. All right. Is this my lines? I'm good in this range. Okay, guys, I got lines. Grab a rubber band. If you don't have one, there should be plenty on your table. Pass them back to the back row. There's some for the people sitting back there. And I want you to answer me this question. Take a couple minutes. You don't have to write it down, but you can. It's on there. Tell me all the things that you can use a rubber band for. Just popcorn some things. What do you use rubber bands for? Huh? Okay, those of you that are young enough, oh no, this thing? No, it's this thing. It's the rubber band gun. Now, if I was in school when I started teaching, when I came down here, I could pick off a kid from 15 to 20 feet away with a good rubber band. What are rubber bands used for? What do you use rubber bands for? Hold things together. What else? Come on. Come on, women. Where's she? She was grabbing. Come on, what do you do? Last time I did this, the women were going, oh, thank you, I've got a scrunchie. And I was like, what's a scrunchie? It's a rubber band. What does it do? It holds my hair back. Okay, I don't have that problem. What else? Come on, what do you use rubber bands for?
When you have a Tupperware and you don't have a lid that fits the Tupperware.
You're revealing some things about yourself here, okay? That's a whole other conversation, Tupperware and that whole world of the mess of lids. Yes, strong rubber bands.
Pregnant women use them to extend their waistline on their pants. So it's time to buy
Okay.
those other pants.
I was worried that was going to get too much information there, but you're pregnant women, but that may be an idea that guys can, because guys do the untuck thing so we can unbutton, but it's untucked, you can't see it's unbuttoned. I don't want to go into that thing, so it's, the elastic. Hey, some of those places make elastic men's really nice jeans. My son works at Buckle for a long time, and I'd get these are nice Buckle jeans, the best jeans I've ever worn, but they have this a little elastic kind of built into them, and you're like, it grows with me. I like it. Because they cost too much for me to get a new pair when I outgrow them. I love pants that conform with my maturing figure. Anything else? Anything else, rubber bands? Come on. Anxiety. Interesting. Yeah, you just kind of, right, absolutely. Now, tell me this. All the things that we can think of in a rubber band, what do they all have in common? What is the one thing that everything that you can think of about a rubber band has in common concerning the use of a rubber band?
Stretches but doesn't break.
Stretches but doesn't break. Tension. Rubber bands are only useful when they're stretched. This rubber band right here is not useful. Serves no purpose to hold anything together, to function in any capacity, to keep my pants up, to keep the lids on my stuff. It is no good unless it's stretched. Do you hear me? You understand? This is our life. Tension. Growth comes from tension. When things are stretched is when they become useful. Think about this. You would not be where you are today or who you are today without some form of tension in your life. Everything that you've achieved or accomplished, if you think back how you got there, there was some form of tension, challenge, pressure that caused you to move from where you were to where you are. Think about those times in your life where you've grown the most. How did it feel going through? Was there discomfort? Was there pain? Did you feel stretched? Give me a little yes. Was it worth it? When you got through the other side, when you grew and you came through it and you've looked back and you're not in it, can you say, you know what, I wish it might have not happened that way. I didn't necessarily want that, but you know what? Who I am today, where I stand today is better than where I stood yesterday. I would have liked to get there a little differently, but you know what? I am not the same. It was worth it. But it's only worth it if you get through it. If you become better. It's not worth it if it goes through you and you don't get up and you don't move past it. Then it's not worth it. You've wasted the pain. You've wasted the stretching. There's a danger. Once you're through it, we often start settling in though. Have you ever gone graduation? You've worked hard, you've graduated, maybe an MBA or college. You get done, and we just start settling. Or changes in work or environment or family. We've worked hard to get somewhere. There's a danger with this is that we can become comfortable, and we start settling in to that place again. There's a danger in that, because there's still more growth. But we say, yeah, I'm tired, I don't want to do that. And there's a time of rest, but there's a place where we are continually growing. The truth is, we never stop growing. Ever. We never stop being stretched. Growth is a lifelong process. It isn't just a moment. We're continually in this place. But growth is also a choice. You can choose not to grow. We're the only living organism on the planet that has a choice not to grow. Everything else that's living will always grow until it dies. Trees, plant, anything that's living is continually growing until it no longer exists. We're the only entity that God created that can choose not to grow. You can choose not to gain, not to learn, you can just sit there and waste away. But to grow, it requires change and stretching and tension. But the reality is, how many of you are musically inclined and play an instrument, a stringed instrument? Tell me, you play what?
I play cello.
Cello. So what makes the sound so amazing in that cello?
Oh, it's a beautiful instrument.
But why is it beautiful?
The strings are stretched.
And they're taut. There's tension involved in those strings. This isn't new information. I'm not giving you something you haven't heard before, but I want to put it in context. The most beautiful music in the world is when there is perfect tension involved in that situation. You loosen those strings and you try to run that bow across it, what are you going to get?
Just a fuzzy sound.
Just this, ugh. But you tighten them just right. And then they play together just right. And the music and the sound is amazing. That's your life. The tension in your life has the ability to create amazing music, an amazing destiny, an amazing future, but it requires some tension. You would not be where you are, who you are, without some form of tension in your life. One of my favorite quotes is this. It said, God's gift to us is potential. Our gift back to God is developing it. So what are you going to do with your potential? Now, we only have a few minutes, so we're going to be done at, 9:30 to make sure? Okay. I want to go through some of these benefits of stretching. I want you to see the benefit, the positive place of this tension, this change, this pressure in your lives. I want to flip the script of how you look at it, because how you look at it is going to then define how you go through it, how you deal with it, how you come out the other side of it. So there's 7 benefits I'm going to share with you. They're on that page. You can fill them in. We'll try to get through all of them. Won't talk about them in depth. We could talk about each one of these in 30 minutes easily. But I'm just going to give them to you. If one of them resonates with you, I'd encourage you to sit on it for a while and just kind of, what does that look like for me? What does that mean? What would it mean to embrace that understanding? So the first one is this. Few people ever want to be stretched. We already talked about that, right? Very few of us want to be stretched. We don't go, stretch me, pull me apart, make my life challenging, create tension for me. I love it when you do that. Change my job description, bring in a new this, change that, go there. I love it when things are just a little upside down. Some of you do, because you get energized by the challenges. But most of us go, no, don't touch my stuff. Don't mess with my world. Don't move that thing. Don't get in my space. I'm comfortable. I know what it looks like here. Even if it's bad, I know what it looks like, so leave it alone. Imagine saying to your employer, imagine saying to your boss here, hey, I know I'm overqualified, but I promise to only use half of my ability. Really, hire me. Right? Yeah. You're not going to say that. But the reality is that most of us only use a fraction of our potential. We don't say that, but we do that. We rarely, if ever, reach our full potential. When was the last time you learned something new for the very first time? Where you sought out to learn something new that you've never learned before for the very first time. See, we live our life in cliff notes. We live our life in sound bites, or we live our life in 124 characters. That's the generation that's coming up. And it's this fast-paced, immediate, now, gratification, tell me, teach me, show me. Don't take all this time. Just get there, get it done. That's the first one. Number 2, settling for the status quo ultimately leads to destruction. When we settle for the status quo, it leads to destruction. Most people are satisfied to settle into their comfort zone. Every one of you have a comfort zone. Some of yours is a big Comfort zone sounds very small, but we all have one. We have the place where we feel like we're just safe right here. This is my space. I am good. That comfort zone of life that we have elicits certain patterns and habits that we have learned from the people around us. The people that raised us, the people that influenced us. They create this world and we adopt that world. We become like that world. Being in a comfort zone may feel good and it may feel safe, but it often leads to mediocrity, dissatisfaction. We feel like we're in a rut. Our wheels are spinning and we're not going anywhere. It takes real courage to push outside of your comfort zone. Some of you right now today are probably being challenged in your work life, your personal life, your friendship life, your church life, your faith life. You're being challenged and pushed outside of your comfort zone. And you think that's a terrible thing. I would challenge you, say, you know what? It may not be. It may actually be the best thing that's ever happened to you. Because when you push through, you learn more about yourself and you come out on the other side a better person, a stronger person, more clear vision, more clarity of your life, your focus, your destiny. Number 3, stretching is an inside job. In other words, it always starts from the inside. I believe this about God. I believe this about life. I believe this about work. I believe about transformation, revival, discipleship, you name it. This is what I believe. God is always personal before he's corporate. He cares first about me before he cares about me and my wife. He cares first about me before me, my wife, and my children. He cares first about me before me, my wife, my children, my job, and it's always personal before it's corporate. God works from the inside of us to create something beautiful that comes out of us that impacts the world around us. But if we skip the inside work and we just think we're going to live on the outside reality, it's going to fall and crumble at some point if the inside doesn't match the outside. This stretching is an inside job. It comes internally before it's external. It's in you before it's out of you. 4th one, stretching always requires change. There's that word we all love. Stretching will always require change. A couple truths I want to tell you about that, okay? First one is, you can't improve and avoid change at the same time. You can't improve and avoid changing at the same time. If you're going to improve, to grow, you're going to have to give something up. John Maxwell talks about the law of the trade-off. To grow higher, something's going to have to be left lower. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, but there's an exchange that happens in growth. Not everything goes. Think about your growth moments in your life when you've changed. Did everything go with you? No, it doesn't always all go with you. Something has to be sacrificed and left behind. Stretching will always require change. You can't improve and avoid change at the same time. Second thing about this, we must stop looking over our shoulder at what was and start focusing on what is. To change, you can't go, well, I remember it was like, and we did this, and it was always, and this is how, and you remember, but we're trying to go here. But you remember, let's carry this with us to here. Well, the idea of change is, this might have been good, but there's something greater. Do you trust the process? Are you willing to work through to the greater, but you might have to let go of the great? That's number 4. George Eliot says this, it's never too late to be what you might have been. It's never too late to be what you might have been. I've worked with people who are older and closer to retirement and businesses, and like, I wish I would have heard all this when I was 25 and starting out. And said, why? You're hearing it now. You're not retired. You're not dead. You're not done. You're hearing it now. What will you do with it now? Oh, but if I would have only known this back then. You didn't. Get over it. You know it today. What are you going to do with it now? Number 5, stretching sets you apart from others. Stretching sets you apart from others. Have you ever noticed that people seem to get satisfied or they settle into mediocrity? But successful people always set themselves apart. They go above and beyond what other people do. There's a saying, we all know it, a rising tide lifts all boats. You are called to be the rising tide. There's a world of boats around you that need uplifting. You have the ability to do that. A couple more and we'll just finish up. Number 6, stretching can become a lifestyle. When you stop stretching, you stop growing. So stretching needs to be a lifestyle. Make stretching part of your daily routine. What is it that you can do every day that's going to cause you to stretch a little bit more? Challenge your thinking just a little bit more. Cause you to contemplate something just a little bit more. Because when you do, you'll either own what you already knew in a greater capacity because you discovered it really is true, or you'll realize I've been holding on to something my whole life that I thought was true, and you know what? It's not. Wouldn't you want to know that? So you could let it go and grab what the real truth is? Number 7, stretching gives you a shot at significance. Maxwell says this. He says, if you are going to grow yourself, you must first know yourself. There's this gap between being good and being great. And our ability to close that gap is directly related to your willingness to be stretched. Anyone can be a success. Success is a moment, a title, a job, a building, a salary. Anyone can be successful. There's a difference between being successful and living a life of significance. Significance lives past your life. It's what ripples past who you are. You can be successful and have no significance. But if you pursue significance, you will always be successful. So let me finish up just with a couple thoughts and we'll be done. John says this. He says, I want to make a difference doing something that makes a difference, at a time that makes a difference, with people who make a difference. People who are committed to stretching themselves will make a difference. Isn't that the point of why you're a part of Living Waters? To make a difference. You're a part of a people who want to make a difference. That very thought in all the challenges is going to cause you to grow. So the bottom line, this law of the rubber band, it's you've got to always look for ways to stretch yourself. So let me just quote on the last page there, the bottom of that last page, wherever I put it. Here we go. This last thing I said down here, I wrote this last night as I was cleaning some stuff up. It says, from the day we are born until Jesus calls us home, there's one constant we can expect: change. Change is inevitable. It involves stretching, which creates tension, which causes discomfort. The issue is not change, it's how we go through it. It will cause us to either slow, go, which means leave, or grow. But growth is a choice. I want to encourage you as I wrap up today, embrace being stretched. Get out of your comfort zone. It begins with your thoughts and your words. And it'll always require change, which always will set you apart from everyone around you. Remember, it's a lifestyle. You must choose it if you're going to grow, if you're going to live a life of significance. And then our lives will not only impact your life and your family, but it will impact others around you, those you know and those you don't know. So I appreciate the time to share with you today. I love this kind of stuff. I love encouraging you. And I hope there's something you can take away when you take this rubber band with you about how you can begin to stretch and grow and go through these opportunities and changes in your life. So I appreciate being here. Thanks for the opportunity.